Hi everyone, I'm Mohan. I think we are ready to start.
Hi guys. Now we'll start today's workshop, okay? So firstly, I want to introduce you to today's members of the workshop. Right?
So yeah, hi guys. My name is Mohan Shi, and I am recent graduate from product design at St. Martin, and a current student of creative computing at CCI. And I am a designer and researcher that seek to adapt the colonising mindset in design practice. And this is the workshops that I conduct with my friends, and hope it is helpful.
And I'm Simon. I'm also a recent graduate of product design at St. Martin's. I'm also joining Creative Computing Institute this September. I'm an interdisciplinary practitioner across design, product management, and coding.
Hi guys, I'm Yi Dai, and I'm a student from Creative Computing Institute. I focus on user experience design and interaction design, and I'm interested in design justice.
Okay, great. So before we actually start today's workshop, we want to give you an expectation of what you will take away from today's workshop. And that's today's objective. Instead of being a problem solver in the face of ever-increasing complexity in both a societal and market-led context, the emphasis is now being placed on designer as a problem finder. Meanwhile, current research has critiqued the self-rightness of design thinking paradigm and reveals its colonizing nature. This workshop aims to use food as a medium to apply the decolonized mindset in practice and construct tools and approaches for the future. We aim to help you to consciously research from all necessary perspectives before you make a perfect, yet probably useless design. And here's today's workshop agenda. We already spent the first 10 minutes on key information preparation. I hope everyone has done it, hopefully. And now we're spending this 5 minutes in introduction. After 30 minutes of the first session of the workshop, we'll have a 10-minute break, and then we'll come back for another 40 minutes workshop sessions. And then if we have enough time, we'll have another QA sessions. So let's begin. So I want to start the workshop by doing a little interaction with everyone, okay? So that everyone's engaged, hopefully. So please raise your hands in Teams. So there's this function that you can have your hands raised up. Please have your hands raised up if you know the answer of the questions. It doesn't matter if it's true or false. As long as you know it, please raise your hand. And the first question is, do you know if you like this food? I hope everyone raised their hands, okay? Because hopefully you know if you like it or not. It's not that philosophical. Just keep your hands raised up. Let's see. This is so that you all know how to do it. Okay. Yes, it's on the right side, right upright corner of your screen. There's a small emoji thing. And then you can raise your hands up. Okay. Not everyone knows if they like their food, but that's fine. Let's go to the second question. Keep your hands raised up if you know the answer of the question, okay? Do you know if it's a popular food in your country, in your city? Well, okay. Some people already lowered their hand. That's fine. Let's go to next. Do you know the name of the food? Raise your hands again if you know the answer of the question. Okay, more people are raising. Good. And do you know the main ingredient of the food? Hopefully that's on the packaging of the food. And the next. Do you know where was the food manufactured? Hopefully you know where is it made. And then the last question. Do you know how much calories does it contain? And I see there are already people putting their hands down. Good, but you do know how much calories does it contain. So the questions that I've asked are some information that hopefully you can find. Okay, you can now all lower your hands. Thank you very much for participants. So all those questions that I've asked are hopefully some informations you can find. These are some basic informations you can find on the packaging of the food, whether if it's on the back side or is it just on the outside of the package. You can see there's calories, there's a name, also where is the manufacturing locations and times and all that. So these are some basic informations. Also, there are some food like this bananas by Waitrose also show that they are a fair traded banana and the packaging itself is recyclable. So these are some basic informations you can get as a consumer, as a customer. But now I'll ask you a few more questions and see if you know the answer of them. Let's go. First one, do you know the origin of the main ingredients? Raise your hands up if you know the answer. Okay, next. Do you know the history of industrialization of your chosen food? Okay, you do know the origin of the main ingredients. That's good. What about the second one? Do you know the history of industrialization of your chosen food? I'm really surprised. Okay, next. Do you know if it's ethically manufactured? And next. Great, SCK knows it. Do you know what kind of colonial legacy it produces? And do you know how many stakeholders were there before it reached you? Like supermarkets, distributors, farmers? So it's quite obvious that we all realize that less people knows the answer of the second part of the questions. And that's absolutely normal because possible, yes. So it's totally normal that you don't know these informations because these are not informations that you can easily get from a customer's perspective. And from customer's perspective, well, there are some informations that are something you have to look into and you have to do research on. So now next, we're gonna show example, a specific food that we found. It's quite a common food, hopefully. That is rice. So all these 4 different kind of rice, these rice products, they all we found them in London, so they all can be bought in London. Later on, we'll put you in breakout rooms, and we want you to talk about first, have you ever had this kind of rice products before? So have you ever had any kind of rice products before? Both of these products have an identical ingredient, that is rice itself. Why is the final product, including the packaging and the product itself, is different? And both 4 products can be bought in London, but do you think if they share the same target customers? We'll put you in a breakout room for 5 minutes, and hopefully we can get some contributional results. Okay, Brian, could you do that?
Yeah, I will try.
Okay, I'll start with my very personal experience. So when I lived in London, I actually bought 3 different kinds of rices out of these 4. I bought nishiki, and nishiki is great because they are washed rice, so you don't need to wash them again before you cook it. And the Uncle Ben's is actually, it's almost like it's pre-cooked, that you can cook it really easily and it's flavored already. And then I also bought the upright corner. That is, I think that's a rice from China, and it's large package. So once I buy it, I can use it for like 3 or 4 months. I don't have to buy again. So that's why I liked it.
So shall we go to the next page?
Simon and Muhan, Kelly's here, so she can do the breakout rooms if you want, or do you want to just carry on? Because that was quite interesting. But
yes, we probably will carry on. Thank you.
Okay, Kelly, thanks. We'll probably stick out without doing breakout rooms, but thank you very much.
Thank
no worries.
Okay, so we will continue.
Okay, fine. We were hoping for a great discussion, but that's fine. So what we're trying to show you here is that although these 4 products, these 4 rice products, they all have, they probably are categorized as the same kind. They're all rice, but they are actually, when we look back into the life cycle of these products, we'll realize that there's nothing similar between them. the raw materials are not from the same. They're not from the same region or country. They're not harvested in same way. They are the manufacturers got different payment levels, probably because they're from Japan, India, China. They've got different payment methods, and probably some of them are not fair traded. They also have these different distribution methods. So when we look at the life cycle, there's nothing similar about them, but in the end, they all end up in the same place in London, that we all can buy it here. But even though we can buy them all in London, they're likely purchased by different specific target customers. And that's what we want to show you here, that even though they are the same thing, but when you're buying them, so they're all on the same shelf market, on the same shelf, they are actually, the story behind them could be totally different. And that's what we're trying to do here, is to make you realize that first, you might not understand something well enough, even if you have been eating it for many years, because you only know it well enough from one perspective, and that is the customer's perspective. Like, think about the questions we asked about the food you chose. Second, even if you know rice well enough in one region, or the food you know well enough in one region, you probably don't know it well enough in other regions. If you design, and similarly to design, if you design a rice product for a different region with the same old mindsets from your region, you're most likely gonna fail, or you'll probably colonize your target market with your cultural background and your design mindset. And that's how we want to link today's topic from food to design. Back to Ryan.
Okay, cool. Thanks, Simon. So the reason that we choose the food for today is we believe food offer a common ground for cross-cultural examinations, like by comparing the food, the rice analyze rice in the UK market. It helps understand the cultural generality and uniqueness between those two countries and cultures. And the food is crucial to social life and intertwined with numerous issues, including issues around globalization, culture, biodiversity, and political power and employment. And food also ensure discussion can based on your own lived experience. And that's because we believe, that's based on the design justice principle, that we believe everyone is an expert based on their own lived experience. And that we all have unique and brilliant contributions to bring to the design process, which it means the objective of this workshop, that we hope to use the food as a medium to decolonize current design practice. So we will talk about how design tells a single story. How can we against it? Similar to social design, our lack of in-depth understanding around the narratives of the food is the same reasons that social design fails to address underlying structural problems. They underestimate the complexity of political, economic, and environmental problems. They also fails to address culturally different practice. There are more perspectives to search on and more possibilities for explorations. So let's take a look at one laptop per child project, as known as OLPC. In late 2005, the MIT Media Lab founder and tech visionary Nicholas Negopret introduced one laptop per child project to the world. It was supposed to be the laptop that will revolutionize the world's education. OLPC was also famously known as $100 laptops at a time when its competitors cost $1,000 or more. Their vision is to reshape the world's education through distributing $100 laptops to children across the global south and provide them the access OLPC largest design that could endure drop, dust, and heat and water, which almost indestructible. And it's amazing at this price range that at the time when its competitors cost $1,000 or more. And OLPC even pushed a tech leap in the display technology. It featuring a low power and low price dual mode LCD, which can be switched between the full color and black and white mode. It enables children can read in a direct sunlight without visible loss in display details. So the $100 laptop have all the features of an ordinary computer, but requires so little electricity that children could power it up with the hand rack by just moving it like this. But although the hand rack design didn't went to the final productions due to the technical difficulties, but it demonstrates the energy efficiency of the software and hardware design. Here is another example that demonstrates the reason that why Nicholas insists OLPC being non-profit. He said when you are a non-profit, you look at children as a mission, not as a market. So that's the reason that behind OLPC provided the first keyboard standard for Ethiopia. The reason that there's never been a keyboard standard because there's no market and profit to make one. Meanwhile, here's another classic example that demonstrates the cost efficiency of OLPC. Not only all the features of an ordinary platform, but as a laptop for children, design details such as a game controls button can transform OLPC to a gaming console. So it unlocks many new possibilities. And finally, some conscious design details like even like unique color-coded unique icons that ensures each student can find their own laptop simply with the games. So you can see each laptop has a different color-coded icon. But before move on, let's take a few minutes to think. Does educational challenge across the globe will be the same? The true cause behind the lack of education remains unanswered. Could it be because the lack of access to the healthcare, or the infrastructures, poverty, hunger, gender equality, or even due to political conflict? Therefore, if the complex intertwined cause of educational problem is different, how can one-size-fits-all solution like providing laptops to the world could address the global issues? In the concept of American technology, indeed could revolutionize education, but it seems like a good solution for the wrong situation. What OLPC offered was a single Eurocentric technological quick fix solutions that seemed inappropriate for local context. The oversimplified solution that distributing millions of laptops to address complex issues like lack of education seems problematic. All in all, did they see the bigger picture? And a research conducted in Ugarit, which they distributing 400,000 laptops across the country that cover the entire primary school population, has shown the laptop have become recreational tools and fail to serve their educational purpose. And the test results shows no impact on the reading and math for the local children. But the real question is whether the laptop program could help students, but whether they are more effective than other programs competing for the same money. Because the trade-off of providing laptop for learning technology could potentially defund other non-profit programs. So a better understanding of the issues in a particular locations require an in-depth analysis of its history, political dynamic, ethnography, and local practice. So questions regarding clean water, healthcare infrastructures, and so on should be taken into considerations before the design intervention. So OLPC demonstrates the danger of the universal one-size-fits-all solution in social design. So what is right in a context can be wrong in another.
So it reflects the danger of the universal narratives. Who gets to define the universal and who gets excluded? Nicholas told the MIT Technology Review in 2005 that technology is the only means to educate children in the developing world. The complex culturally different causes for the lack of education in low-income countries was universalized into a unitary cause, the lack of access to technology. In summary, let's think about how OLPC tells a single story. Complex issues like lack of access to education in Global South was oversimplified into one cause, the lack of access to the internet. Therefore, what OLPC offered was a one-size-fits-all techno-quick fix that hoped to apply one solution to the Global South. They ignored the culturally inherently different practice and context. So let's take a look at a tremendous, wonderful TED Talk about the danger of the single story.
A few years ago, I visited.
I'm not sure. Can you hear the sound, Simon?
Yes.
Mexico from the US. The political climate in the US at the time was tense, and there were debates going on about immigration. And as often happens in America, immigration became synonymous with Mexicans. There were endless stories of Mexicans as people who were fleecing the healthcare system, sneaking across the border, being arrested at the border, that sort of thing. I remember walking around on my first day in Guadalajara, watching the people going to work, rolling up tortillas in the marketplace, smoking, laughing. I remember first feeling slight surprise, and then I was overwhelmed with shame. I realized that I had been so immersed in the media coverage of Mexicans that they had become one thing in my mind, the abject immigrant. I had bought into the single story of Mexicans, and I could not have been more ashamed of myself. So that is how to create a single story. Show a people as one thing, as only one thing, over and over again, and that is what they become. It is impossible to talk about the single story without talking about power. There is a word, an Igbo word, that I think about whenever I think about the power structures of the world, and it is nkali. It's a noun that loosely translates to be greater than another. Like our economic and political worlds, stories too are defined by the principle of nkali. How they are told, who tells them, when they are told, how many stories are told, are really dependent on power. Power is the ability not just to tell the story of another person, but to make it the definitive story of that person. The Palestinian poet Mourid Barghouti writes that if you want to dispossess a people, the simplest way to do it is to tell their story and to start with secondly. Start the story with the arrows of the Native Americans and not with the arrival of the British, and you have an entirely different story. Start the story with the failure of the African state and not with the colonial creation of the African state, and you have an entirely different story. I recently spoke at a university where a student told me that it was such a shame that Nigerian men were physical abusers like the father character in my novel. I told him that I had just read a novel called American Psycho, and that it was such a shame that young Americans were serial murderers. Now, obviously, I said this in a fit of mild irritation, but it would never have occurred to me to think that just because I had read a novel in which a character was a serial killer, that he was somehow representative of all Americans. And now this is not because I'm a better person than that student, but because of America's cultural and economic power, I had many stories of America. I had read Tylan, Updike, and Steinbeck, and Gateskill. I did not have a single story of America. When I learned some years ago that writers were expected to have had really unhappy childhoods to be successful, I began to think about how I could invent horrible things my parents had done to me. But the truth is that I had a very happy childhood, full of laughter and love in a very close-knit family. But I also had grandfathers who died in refugee camps. My cousin, Polly, died because he could not get adequate health care. One of my closest friends, Ukoloma, died in a plane crash because our fire trucks did not have water. I grew up under repressive military governments that devalued education so that sometimes my parents were not paid their salaries. And so as a child, I saw jam disappear from the breakfast table. Then margarine disappeared. Then bread became too expensive. Then milk became rationed. And most of all, a kind of normalized political fear invaded our lives. All of these stories make me who I am. But to insist on only these negative stories is to flatten my experience and to overlook the many other stories that formed me. The single story creates stereotypes. And the problem with stereotypes is not that they are untrue, but that they are incomplete. They make one story become the only story.
Great. This is a very amazing TED Talk, and if I would highly recommend if you can watch it in your own time after workshops. So let's get back to it. So this is, I think, it's very nice to present that how the single story and the oversimplified understanding of design fail to address underlying structural problems. Meanwhile, they also create stereotypes, and the problem with stereotypes is not that they are untrue, but they are incomplete. So it addresses the need that we need to see the wider picture and balance with a great variety of stories. Designers' presumptions of everything are proven to be solved and made better it needs to be investigated. And what this causes is the result of it is the single way of knowing, doing, and being. So we need to acknowledge the raw power and privilege of design, and we need to decolonize the mechanisms that exist within the design practice. So that's why we put forward the concept of sensitive observations and situated design. We hope to prevent the oversimplified understanding of issues with more conscious and sensitive observations. And situated design emphasizes the importance of culturally situated design practice. So we will have a 5-minute coffee break. And if you have, we will still be around here. And if you have any questions, just pop by and talk to us. So we will see at 45.
That's quicker than I expected.
Thank you.
All right, so that's the first half of the workshop. You can have a little break right now. If you have any questions you want to ask, we're also here to answer. You can just speak. Feel free to speak. Feel free to ask. Yep. I'll be back in 5 minutes.
Hello, everyone. So we are back. So yeah, we'll continue. So the next part, we will introduce some tools for adapting situated design. Yes. Simon, you want to say something? So yeah, for this part, we will introduce some tools for adapting situated design. So before we talk about situated design, let's take a look at what situated means. It's based on the concept of Donna Haraway put forward as situated knowledge. And here's a 3-minute short video that explains the concept. Let's check it out.
Well, situated knowledges is a very useful term because immediately it reminds us that knowledge is never pure, simple, and never comes from no viewpoint. What I mean by that is it always comes from a viewpoint, and several viewpoints often. So it's always situated. In ordinary terms, to say that knowledge is situated means that there isn't some general, completely value-free, context-free knowledge that is ahistorical and completely the same. Knowledge is always situated somewhere and in some time. And what something means in that place and that time differs from what it means somewhere else.
Whenever knowledge is thought, produced, and disseminated, it's always because it is situated. It's situated in a certain time, it's situated historically, it's situated in certain places, and it varies from place to place. It changes with social change, knowledge has changed, social psychology has changed and continues to change in many ways. And it's also situated in terms of values, belief systems, and cultural differences. And so when you look from the outside at social psychology, when you step back and try and make sense of it, it's really very useful to be able to say, I see that that happened because it was 1950s, it was North America, it was when a certain scientific idea of social psychology dominated. And therefore, it's not surprising that this is the kind of knowledge that was produced. And so we use this idea in the course to situate the kind of social psychology which we're showing to students.
Certainly, social psychological knowledges are situated, but so it is that everyday commonsensical knowledge, the things we take for granted in living our everyday lives, that social psychologists are deeply interested in, are also situated.
To be a wife in these days, in the 2000 and somethings, is very different from being a wife even when I was a wife the first time round in the 1960s and 70s. To talk about what a good wife is or being a good wife is to talk about two very, very different things between those two times. So the knowledge of what being a good wife is has changed. To be a good wife in this culture and to be a good wife in a township in South Africa or in a small village in Shropshire compared to being in an inner city in Los Angeles. You know, what wife means in those different places is profoundly different.
Yes, so great. So what feminist scholarship has highlighted knowledge productions has always reflect particular cultures and historical conditions. So that's what Donna Haraway defined as situated knowledge. However, the process and methods of the current design paradigm seems to reflect a more universal rather than cultural specific approach. So we need design that's against universal narratives. We need design that informed by the culturally situated knowledge, and we need design that continue decolonizing the mechanisms within the design practice. By delivering a more conscious culturally situated design approach, we hope to wave a caution cross-cultural translations of design power between the global north and global south, between dynamic and static, and between science and creativity. So therefore, we put forward the concept of situated design. We will explain how can we apply the situated design in the practice in the following 50 minutes. And one is sensitive observations that addresses the importance of being humble and avoid presumption. And we will also introduce the design justice principle, and then we will finish up with a set of 12 reiterations card decks for you to use in the future. So yes, so for the being sensitive observation, it's important that avoid presumptions and require constant reiterations of the issues that of our design, and being humble observers and staying with the troubles, like Donald Hathaway said. So first, let's take a look at the Stephen Gill work, the pillar. So for this set of image, it might become very unordinary since that just a pillar sitting in the field, that something that we will frequently overlook at. It's kind of ordinary in a way, but the photographers, by shooting a series of images that body animals interacts with the pillar, it reveals wider connections between the pillars and the animals and the natures that we might tend to ignore. And the supernormal best demonstrate what we mean by careful examinations. This design appears to be ordinary when we display in the exhibition context. It's pretty unstimulating. This is the normality of the objects. That's why we frequently ignore them without carefully examining those objects, because they were so ordinary, they're full of unconscious everyday sense of normal that we have long been used to it. But take a look closer. Take the trash bin as an example. To the overall tapering shape express an enthusiasm to receive the trash, like most waste bin does, to conscious design details like addition to the lid with the hose that goes steps further by offering to keep its contents hidden. Moreover, to details such as the size of fillet, the selection of material to the height, and so on. By doing so, you might realize the design of those normal objects are so super that we might ignore the design itself. Or we might even think this is how things should look like. Or even the products become invisible that we never pay attention to them. These are numerous careful considerations. There are numerous careful considerations behind those objects. And whether you can notice those details or not demonstrate if you are being sensitive, observing or not. Similarly, if you take the food that you are familiar with the most, like, do you really know it well enough? Also think about, will the concept of the trash bin be the same to the indigenous culture? Will the perception toward the waste bin being shifted without industrializations? Because waste itself is a human concept. Therefore, will the concept of waste be the same among us, even we are all humans? So OLPC will still. So yeah, let's introduce Dai to
I will introduce design justice for you, and we focus on 4 principles which suit the topic today. And we use design to sustain, heal, and empower our communities. As an example of OLPC still thinks about communities from the perspective of the lures. They didn't seek solutions from exploitative and oppressive systems. And the second, we center the voices of those who are directly impacted. To be honest, the product of OLPC is a small, sturdy, and cheap laptop computer powered by a hand crank. It's really a good product, but OLPC did not stand in the user's perspective to effectively solve their education problems. And the fourth one, we see the role of the designer as a facilitator rather than an expert. I think this is the principle that best illustrates OLPC. Designers are listeners. Wherever there is a problem, there are already people acting on the problem in some fashion. What we need to do is facilitate these problems. The eighth one, we work towards sustainable, community-led and controlled outcomes. As we introduced before, OLPC go against these principles. It failed to put itself into the user's shoes. It stands as an expert, not a facilitator. It seems solve the problem. It's a perfect product, but not adjust measures to local conditions. The Design Justice Network is an international community of people and organizations who are committed to rethinking design process so that they center people who are too often marginalized by design. We work according to a set of principles that were generated and collaborative added by our network. It has become a common agreement. Actually, it has 10 principles totally. You can click the link to find more details. And you can also sign up and be a member of this organization. It sometimes have lectures. We will put the links to the chat bar. Hi, Ran.
Hi. Okay, thanks, Dai, and thanks, Kelly and Graham. So I will continue. So for the next step, we will put forward a series of inspiration cards developed by us that could potentially use in your further research. So these are very much similar concepts that you might encounter in the design education area, but we only included 12 of those concepts to illustrate how design can adapt in this workshop. The rest of them, you can find details, descriptions, and step-by-step guide. Simply Google it. And later we will conduct an in-class activity that you could revisit the food that you chosen based on the methods proposed by the card. We hope you can conduct your future research with more different perspectives. That's because we need to stop telling a single story, and many stories matter. So firstly is the life cycle assessment. You might find the questions that we proposed in the earlier discussion is based on the life cycle assessment. So it's important that you're considering the full productions and distributions process and so on. It's important to think about all the stakeholders that involved and the social influences it creates and key economical drivers behind it. And then it's the shadowing. It's a very fun process to observe and analyze issues around how consumers interact with the product in a daily basis. So let's take a rice as an example. You can probably follow your friend from maybe Italy and observing where did they buy their rice and what's the stores looks like and what does the packaging looks like. Then what food do they cook with? What food did they cook with the rice? And finally, where and how did they dump the trash? It could become a huge difference when you conduct the same shadowing research to other cultural background families, from Chinese, Indian, or Japanese, etc. You could get a cross-cultural and vivid understanding of the power of rice in various culture. Then we can take a further analysis regarding the quality, beneficials, values that the rice has been reproduced. Then we can probably combine the both primary research and foreshadowing and secondary research of life cycle assessment to map out all the stakeholders to analysis of each stakeholders and how they are affected by the food in the design process. And it would be also fun to think about the narratives that where your food originated, how the urban environment influenced the food and how the food embodied those values from the city. The psychogeography is a fun process that maps up the sensations of the city. It emphasizes the playfulness and drifting, so it might be a nice approach that you want to check out. Finally, we also provide a set of tools that a website might be helpful for your research, especially in the context of global pandemic. Digital Digital tools like Google Earth could help you better understand the narrative of the food. The Warfarin Everyone is an amazing website that could help you acquire more scientific information with a few clicks. It worth checking out afterward. I highly recommend it. So I will share the link later and put it in the chat so you can take a look at yourself. So now we are arriving at our final part of our workshop. So we will revisit our work. So let's welcome Sam to guide it.
Sure. So at the last part of today's workshop, we want to finish up the loop. We want to go back to where we started, and that is to revisit the food that we have chose at the beginning, and to ask us the same question that we couldn't answer at the beginning, and to look into them. And then in the end, we want everyone to, first we'll give a list of questions that you can choose to look into. And then in the end, we want everyone to write a one sentence to present the most surprising information you found by searching into that question. So Brian, could you please show everyone the questions?
Sure.
Yes. So first of all, how we're going to do it, we really want everyone to actually look into this during this workshop so that you actually take something away. But of course, because we don't have enough time, we'll be only looking to one question per person. You can choose the one you want. And then hopefully, if you're interested, you can look into more questions later, okay? And here, we're gonna put everyone in breakout rooms. And then we'll have 8 to 10 minutes. I think use like 3 to 5 minutes to research on the question that you chose. And then summarize it into one sentence of the surprising information you found, okay? And Kelly, could you please put everyone in breakout room now?
I'm not sure it's Kelly's.
I'm just calling Kelly in, and we shall pick up and we can do breakout rooms.
Great, thank you, Kelly.
Yeah, you can already start to think about the question that you want to research, and actually just start researching on it already. And then later on summarize it into a one sentence summarize of the surprising information. And for those who didn't, those who wasn't here for the first part, we wanted you to choose the food that you like. It's probably your favorite food, or it's just a snack you can find in your house with a package. And now, at the first part, we wanted you to look into the simple information that you can find on the packaging. And now I want you to look into these deeper questions. Choose one that you want. Okay. Can you put people in 5 breakout rooms, please? Yes, 5.
Do you guys want people randomly allocated to the breakout rooms?
Yes,
yeah.
5
Yeah.
groups, please.
No problem. I'll put them in now.
And we'll be back. We'll be back in 8 to 10 minutes. Thank you.
Yeah. Yes, and for those who are coming late, sorry.
Yeah.
So for those who are coming late joining late at this workshop, I've shared the link of the slides, and I will post it again in the chat, so you can take a look at our slides, so you can catch up what we were talking about. So, thank you.
Make sure you do it. Get engaged. Breakout room.
Guys, the breakout room function doesn't appear to be available in this meeting.
It should be there for the person who organised it.
Yeah, I think because it's come from the academic support events calendar, it's not given me permission.
So there is no organiser in terms of Teams.
I'm wondering, let me get in touch with Graham quickly, because he might have additional access that I don't. Bear with me and I'll come straight back.
Kelly, Graham couldn't access breakout groups either.
Oh, he couldn't?
No. So we thought maybe you were the organiser because you'd sent in.
Yeah, that would make sense, but it doesn't seem to be coming up for me. There must be some kind of restriction.
That's fine. Could everyone just start doing this? Choose one question and summarize the most surprising information you found into one sentence. And then after, when you're ready, just text it into the chat room. That should be totally fine. Okay?
Yes, that'd be great. Thank you, everyone.
I think don't make it into a super long research. It can be quick. It's totally fine. We can whenever you have it ready, just text it into the chat room. Thank you.
Great, we've seen some answers coming out. Before, yeah, you guys can still type in the answers that it would be great to share with your answers and to share to everyone. And before that, I might share what I've done before. Okay, so yeah, previously I did with Yanbing about for these workshops is we choose the river snail noodles, which is known as 螺蛳粉 in China. So this is a food that is very popular recently in China after the pandemic. And what is surprising is the food is the food where it originates. Liuzhou is an industrial city, and the local governments kind of stimulating the process of industrializations of this food, and then turned it into from an industrial city into a popular food production centers and bring lots of incomes to the local communities. And by doing the process, we use the inspiration card that we will provide. So we use the digital tools to analyze the local area to get a context of like how the cities were built. And we also check out few documentaries regarding the food. And we also take a look at the websites to try to find their competitors and use the perceptual mapping to kind of differentiate from its competitor. And we also use the life cycle assessment to analyze the whole process of the food productions and distribution process, and like for all the ingredients and what's the different and what problems occurred in the process. Meanwhile, we also take a shadowing process, which is quite fun, and we go to the local London Chinese shop and buy it and cook it at the roast. So we also bought a lot of like several different brands to compare with the packaging of this, and like try to understand like for the tiny issues, like they are all separate packaged, so lots of packaging waste has been produced. So yes, so it's kind of like this is just demonstrate how you can use the positions the research card deck in your future work, and the Mirror is a very nice platform that you can that you can play with if you haven't used it before. I highly recommend it. So I will finish my sentence afterwards, and yes, let's welcome Simon to maybe conclude. So everyone's ready.
So now we're gonna wrap up today's workshop.
So yes, so we will. So you guys can keep post your answers to the chat rooms, and we will give a wrap up, and we will continue answering. And because there's a following Q&A sessions after this workshop, so we will meet up at the team room afterwards. So yes, let's welcome Simon to give a recap.
So in this workshop, we aim to use packaged food to demonstrate how people might be easily satisfied with shallow information depth during research. We hope you were able to raise designers' awareness of the importance to know other stories of the social problem they are trying to solve. Social problems may have similar presentations or have entirely different core issues to be solved. Think about the rights we talked about. Designers can avoid producing great designs for wrong questions by being a sensitive observer, utilize inspiration cards, and follow guidelines of design justice. When I say great design for wrong questions, think about one laptop per child project. So that is a great design. It's value of money, it's definitely is well manufactured, but it's not for the same. It's not for the right question. This workshop is merely a beginning. We hope you could keep this in mind while making any designs and keep coming back to any methodologies that might help you. We're not experts here to teach you everything. We hope this workshop can raise awareness to start thinking about this and start to use these methods and inspiration cards as you need.
Great.
See more? So great.
Thanks so much for your coming today, and it's really our honors to be present to you, and we hope this is helpful. And I would like to say special thanks to Yan Liu, which he helped a lot for this workshop to all the process during all the process, and Phineas and Hunter to give us these opportunities, and all the team for academic support that help all the ways through these workshops. So thanks so much, and thanks all for coming today. We are very great. So thank you. So
thank you so much.
And if you have any questions for any page or anything unclear, we're here to answer. Okay.
Yep. So we will meet you at the common. And if you have any questions, we will stay here for the rest of half an hour. So yeah, see you around. Hope this. So bye.
No, I thought we were just staying here to answer questions.
Oh yeah, I will just turn it off.
You want to ask? Just text it in the text room.
Yeah.
Or we can chat room.
Yeah.
Yeah, if you want to leave, this is the end. Take your time. If you're not living, I'm assuming that you have a question for us. Right?
Jeez.
Yeah, I have a little question.
Okay.
Sure.
I want to ask why you guys want, why you start this question, why you have this idea talking about food.
Mm-hmm. Yes. Yeah. Okay. I will answer it because yes, this is the workshop that because I'm studying creative computing at CCI, and this is a topic that we cover during our critical studies lectures, and the reason that we want to promote this to a wider audience because the first time because the colonizing concept is quite a new one, and it's an emerging field that not many people have raised discussion about it, and we hope to use this as an opportunity to promote to spark the discussions and further research on this area. So we use the reason that we use the food as the medium is because the variety of the background that our masters has been, because there are students from the music and from the computer science that they might not know the design very well. So the food often a common ground for them to discuss and analyze issues and to spark wider discussions about the issues around it. So yeah.
Yeah. Just to add up, also even as designers, we know that we need to look at the things from different angles and different perspectives. But until you actually learn the methods like sensitive observer or the inspiration card, you'll never know if you have looked from enough different angles. So this is a methodology that can help you to make sure it's like a checklist so that you know you have already looked at the question from enough angles. And the reason why we use food is really because it's something we think people can empathize on. Yeah. And that should answer you, I guess.
Yeah, I love your answer.
Thank you.
Thank you.
It's our first time doing this, so we know we have a lot of improvement spaces, but hopefully you like it. Okay, what did you say?
And another question I want to ask is, in the page you suggested us to watch that TED speech.
Okay, I see. Yes, so you can see from our workshop name is the calling the other story of your food is also based on her idea of the danger of a single story. So our so the main idea here is like what OLPC represents is kind of the danger of the single story. So it tells the universal ideas and universalize the power of design and the tools that design can bring. And it also oversimplifies the understanding that like what the speaker said, it threatened the experience and threatened the problems of the global educational problems. So we use this as a comparisons to bring her ideas of the danger of single story in the novel context into the design practice. So we use the OLPC as a reference, as a case study to demonstrate. So you can see from the 33 page, we use the quotes that the danger of the single story is it creates stereotypes, and the problem with stereotype is not they are untrue, but they are incomplete. So we need to see the wider picture and balance with a great variety of story. So we need more perspectives to conduct our research before our design interventions to the local context. So yeah, I hope that's answered your questions.
Yeah, I see. I love your answer.
Thank you.
And
So I might stop the recording, and thanks to everyone, whoever was watching and whoever joined the participate in the workshops. And thanks so much for coming. And we will.
Thank you so much.
And we will post our email address in the chat, so you can just check it out. And if you have any further questions, you can just contact us there. And see you in the future. Okay.